Hello, I'm David Puttnam, and I think you're sitting in a theatre which is in a building named after me, which is a huge honour. I spent 10 very, very happy years as Chancellor of the University of Sunderland. You're also at the premiere of the first of a series of screenings that Chris has organised, celebrating the career of my friend, colleague, and Northumbrian, Ridley Scott. Ridley is an extraordinary man. I mean, a really extraordinary man. He's even older than me. And here he is, I think at 86, doing his God knows how manyth film with the same kind of energy, vigour and excitement that he's always brought to his work. He is a remarkable, remarkable bloke. I've known him for 60 years, believe it or not. I first met him, he just graduated from the Royal College of Art. He was actually painting the corridor of a friend of mine's flat when we actually first met. But we were in advertising together. He was extraordinarily successful as a TV commercials director. And we started plotting and planning together how it would be to navigate him into the feature film industry. The other person I was working with at exactly the same time was Alan Parker. They were incredible rivals in the commercials business. And we were going along together, trying to make it work. As things worked out, Alan, who'd written my very first feature film, Melody, got a head start. He devised a film that became Bugsy Malone, and more by luck than by judgment, probably, I was able to put together the financing for it. We shot it at Pinewood Studios. We took it to Cannes. It was a spectacular, if rather unexpected, success. Successful enough that as we walked out of the theatre, and I stood at the top of the steps watching Alan being highly celebrated, I was standing with a man called David Picker. David Picker had just recently been announced as the head of Paramount Pictures, and I knew him from earlier years. And he said to me, "Oh," he said, "that Parker, he's really got a lot of talent. Do you know anyone else like that?" I said, "As a matter of fact, I do. I'm working with someone called Ridley Scott, who I think is every bit talented, and we're trying to put a film together right now. We said, I'd love to meet him." I, being me, ran around the corner, borrowed some coins, because those are the days of the coin box. This is 1976, and started pushing them in the coin box and phoned Ridley at home, woke him up. And I said, "Ridley, get your ass down here. There's an opportunity to meet with the head of Paramount, and he's interested in what we're doing." To his enormous credit, Ridley somehow got on the equivalent of the milk train, but he got on a very early flight. And the next day, we literally sat on the beach in Cannes with Mr. Picker talking about the future of this bright young man, Ridley Scott. Now, Ridley and I have been working on a script for a film called The Gunpowder Plot, which, surprise, surprise, about the Gunpowder Plot. And the question we were dreading came up from Mr. Picker, which was, what's that going to cost? We didn't really know, but I made up a number, and I said, around $2.3, $2.4 million. He said, "Well, that's really a lot of money for a first feature. Can you come up with something cheaper?" So, okay, so I knew that it couldn't be up in that range. And we had been discussing a book, Conrad's short story called The Duelists, and we're working with a guy called Jerry Vaughan Hughes, working on a screenplay. So I said, "Well, of course, we've also got the Duelists." Got a bit ahead of myself. He said, "Oh, the Duelists," he told him the story. He said, "Oh, that sounds very interesting. What could you make that for?" So I knew it couldn't be 2.4, so I said, 1.3 to 1.4. Oh, he said, "Well, that's more like it. We'll do that." What? He said, "No, we'll take a chance on that." So without reading a script, having pitched the story, and Ridley sitting there with an ice cream around his mouth, we basically got the go-ahead to make the Duelists. There were some conditions. One was that had to be two Americans, not so much in the leads, but in important parts. We then scoured the British film and theatrical establishment for people who were prepared to come and work for us for actually almost nothing. I mean, Albert Finney is in the film for the price of a crate of wine. Those were the days when people would do things like that. So we scrambled the movie together. A few months later, we were actually in the Dordogne shooting it. We shot it in appalling weather. In fact, the scene at the very end is the Dordogne River having overflown its banks and flooded, but gave us a spectacular shot. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I really did. Ridley, to this day, says it was his most enjoyable filmmaking experience. We had no money. We at one point ran out of costumes. There's a scene, the retreat from Moscow is actually most of our crew with hotel blankets around them, trudging through the snow. We actually had, fortunately, hung on to the hats. We didn't have costumes, but we had hats. So there were all sorts of extraordinary things we managed to get away with. It's a good movie, a very good movie, actually. I would argue that in its own way, it's as good or maybe a better movie than Napoleon, which was made for 10 times or maybe 20 times that price. Ridley's proud of it. I'm proud of it. We went to Cannes. We were in Cannes literally the following year after Bugsy. And Ridley won the very first, as it were, now called the Camera d'Or, which is the award for someone's first feature film, which is some achievement. Anyway, it's the beginning of a long and utterly glorious career for him. We've remained friends, and he's a good guy. I admire him. I love his energy. I love his talent. And I only wish I had 1/10 of it. Enjoy the movie.